Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, much like peanut butter and jelly, horror and rock and roll seem to go hand in hand, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and a conversational fashion. And between you and me, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to guess that you do because you're listening. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us over at Amazon, Spotify, Apple, Google, basically wherever you get your podcasts. And we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us that 5-star rating, like, and subscribe across the board, we would truly appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I say this most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, where we cover basically the moving image at large, film, television, festivals, on demand. If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. Boy, oh boy, we got a fun one on this one. On this episode, we are talking about the new film, which is in theaters this Friday, presented by the Foo Fighters. Yeah, you heard me right, the Foo Fighters. It's called Studio 666, and it's the story of how legendary rock band the Foo Fighters moved into an Encino mansion steeped in grisly rock and roll history to record their much-anticipated 10th album. But the house has more history than they even expected, and things get a little gnarly in classic horror fashion. I'm telling you, as a film person, when you see a film with the opening credits presented by the Foo Fighters, it doesn't fill you with hope, but this was so much damn fun. I cannot stress that enough. It is a horror movie made by horror fans. It plays into some of the tropes really effectively, and it's really earnest in what it's trying to do, and it's not a bunch of rock and rollers on screen just for the sake of being there. They are really diving into the horror motif and having a hell of a lot of fun with it. And on this episode, we had the distinct pleasure of sitting down with director BJ McDonnell to talk about sort of the origins of the story and how he got involved, and just sort of making this really very much a love letter to the genre in general, and with some surprises and some cameos and some fun stuff going on. But this movie was an absolute blast, which I cannot recommend highly enough. So when it hits theaters this Friday the 25th, go check it out. Bring a bunch of friends. Have some fun. But first, enjoy our talk with BJ about Studio 666, because it's a good one.
Well, I mean, obviously, just first off, just not only thank you for the time, but congrats on the movie, man. It is so much goddamn fun. Like, I really loved it. But I mean, I guess my first question for you is, because I mean, as a film person, when I see the Foo Fighters presents a movie, I get a little scared, admittedly. But after I watched it, I was like, God damn. They get the tone, they know it, like everyone's fully invested. Like, walk me through sort of the pitch on your end to get involved in this project.
Yeah, it's so funny because I think like your reaction is a lot of people's first reactions that I saw, which is funny because people were like, wait a minute, what? Basically, how it all kind of came about was Dave was recording Medicine at Midnight at the house. Yeah. And he got this idea that the place was a bit creepy, and he, was toying around the idea of making a kind of a horror film. So he wrote this pitch down and gave it to two of the producers that work with him, who are two producers that I've worked with, Jim Rhoda and John Ramsey. And they did like Sonic Highways, in Sound City and those shows. Me and Jim and John, we had been working on other projects and like putting pitches together and things like that. And I don't know if Jim or John or which one said, hey, check out, you should look at our friend BJ, and here's these Slayer videos that he did. And it kind of, the Slayer videos that I did a while back, they were like, it's a storyline. They're very graphic, very gory. And Dave, I believe, checked those out and was like, hey, send them the pitch, like my idea. So they sent the idea to me. I read over that, and then I kind of said, okay, that's cool. And then I just went on my computer on my own and started throwing around my own ideas of what I thought would be neat to also incorporate with Dave's idea. Made a lookbook, and then we set up a meeting, and I showed up and basically gave Jim, John, and Dave the lookbook, talked them through the things that I loved about Dave's idea and the things I thought that I could bring into the film to make it a little bit more involved and scary. And we started talking about directors and movies we loved, and just we started vibing on that. Plus, he also knew that I know band stuff because I used to be in a band. So I think that, you know, with the comfort of Jim and John with me, Dave knowing I know kind of like the film business and the music business, also, it's a comfortable vibe. So then Dave was like, let's do it. And then we started assembling all the people that were right for the project, which is also another reason why the film came out as awesome as it did, because of our people that we brought along board.
Well, and I mean, one thing that really struck me, just the guys really understand the tone of material so well. I mean, obviously they're not actors, but everyone was definitely embracing sort of the horror movie vibe. And I mean, this really hits on a lot of classic tropes. And I mean, how were the guys to work with and sort of understanding sort of the tone of the film that you guys were trying to make? Because I mean, we've seen rock stars been in movies before, but you know, sometimes they're just there. Here, it feels like they're committing.
Yeah, and that was the one thing, you know, because you're right. Sometimes it depends. I've worked with people before in the music business that are just like, all right, it's another day, whatever. You know, I don't really want to be here, but I'm just doing it, blah, blah, blah. And I won't name names. Yeah. But I, you know, with the guys, with everything going forward, Dave and I got to sit and we all got to chat about what we were doing. And, you know, we read through the script, kind of changed things a little bit to make everybody happy. You know, it was just more about all of us having a good time and having fun, you know, and I felt like as long as we kept the vibe on set and the content that we were doing fun and really kept everybody engaged that way, that everyone was going to stay engaged and have a good time making the movie. And I think that made a huge difference with the guys' performance and just the overall, like, wanting to be there. Because you got to keep everybody wanting to be there. Even the crew was so stoked about being there, you know. And I think that played off a lot in the movie. The vibe of the film was exactly what I was talking about with Dave's. Like, we want to make sure we keep it dead serious looking, dead serious. Like, don't go comedy, don't overlight things, make it fun, like dark when it goes dark, light when it's light. But also keep the vibe and tone of an old band film, I think, right. Because we haven't had one in a long time. And I think it's just kind of one of those things that just kind of went off by the wayside for a while. And I felt like it would be cool now to just kind of bring it back.
No, I mean, I think you've done that and then some. And I mean, I think part of that gets almost amplified and legitimized is sort of the casting around the band. I mean, seeing people like Whitney and Will and Jeff. Can you talk a little bit just about sort of casting them and sort of getting everyone sort of pointed in the right direction? Because I mean, obviously on paper, this could just look like a silly vanity project. But as we've been saying, this is so true to sort of the horror vibe and motif, and it's so much fun.
I felt me going into this, I felt as though if I let the guys really do more of improv with the script that we had, I felt as though we were going to get a very good performance and more realistic of what the guys would actually say. I felt like that was kind of, you know, that was the right way to go, because it would let the guys feel a bit more comfortable on acting, you know, because musicians and acting, you know, like I said, it's kind of, you know, you don't know what you're going to get. But if you let the guys be themselves, because they are themselves in the film, you're going to get great stuff. So if we got some actors that are more involved with like comedians and improv, I felt like that was also another thing that everyone could kind of riff off each other as long as we still stayed true to the script. That was going to add a lot of you know, depth and fun to the movie itself. It was just going to give us more than what we just had on paper. And then of course we added in other actors too, like, you know, like Jenna Ortega.
Yeah.
For instance, in the movie, you know, this movie and not going to spoil anything, but like, I don't think the opening people are expecting what they're going to expect. And my whole goal was to basically not give the audience seeing it's a Foo Fighters movie and they watch the movie and all of a sudden it's exactly what they think. I wanted this to open very dark. And I needed someone that was so like, you know, that could perform that could give us the emotions and the scare and the acting abilities of that. And Jenna was perfect for that. Me and my wife watched an audition. We brought her in because we thought her audition for You, or not, her performance in You was so good. And then we were like, we got to have her, and she nailed it, you know, and she was just awesome to work with. So it was just a mix of things that I thought would help the band, and also just having the realism of other actors on board.
You know, in many ways, this felt like a love letter to to 70s and 80s horror? Because I mean, obviously I go into it thinking it's going to be like a quote unquote band movie, but it took me about 2-3 minutes to be like, okay, this is the movie they're making. How influential was not just Dave, but I mean sort of everybody on trying to sort of capture that vibe of, I mean, of those horror movies that we all love?
I think for me, like visually, a lot of the things you see in the film that you are seeing those throwbacks are things that I wanted to throw back. Like when I knew we were going to shoot a certain scene, I wanted to emulate a certain shot from a certain movie, or a certain, you know, iconic image from a certain movie, or do a special effect that actually was a throwback to a certain movie that was like very dear to my heart. My whole goal in going into this was giving Dave what he wanted on the comedy side and the acting side and the performances, but also bringing in the horror elements, because I'm a huge horror fan. And that, you know, like with the whole John Carpenter thing, you know, that to me was like a big deal for me.
No, I mean, something I've got to know, because I mean, Dave is obviously such a personality. How do you sort of turn that personality into a performance?
Dave was easy to work with in that regard, because he, you know, Dave's acted before. And it was nice when he would be there, because he would, you know, he would basically come in, we'd talk about what he was doing, we'd go over the lines, and then we'd throw other ideas around, and we'd kind of just like, we'd hit on the right ones that actually hit with everybody. You know, when you're doing a movie and you're watching a performance of someone, and someone's again going on the improv thing, and you know that the crew behind you is cracking up, you know you've nailed it. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of like, I would go off the vibe of what I thought was great and what he was doing, and the rest of the band too, and everybody. And then also you know, maybe the crew didn't even realize, but I'm also kind of paying attention to, you know, behind me, what's going on, and people that are around me. And if I feel them and I feel the energy of what's happening with the crew, then I know it's time. Like, I know I'll usually know when I've got something, but when it's a group effort of knowing and feeling that in the room, you know, it's time to move on. You got what you wanted.
So, I mean, I guess that dovetails into my next question. As the leader in the room, how do you sort of keep at least the people behind you from not making too much noise? Because I've got to imagine this was probably a fun, laughter-filled shoot.
Oh, it's hilarious. I realized that, like, you know, when I first started, it's like, if people start laughing, they're going to laugh, you know. And unfortunately, you got to kind of look over at you kind of have to look over and go, you know, at the sound guy and go, do we need to do another one of those? Was that too bad for sound, or are we cool with the you know, the lav mics that we had on them? And they'll be like, hey, we're good. You know, we can, you know, we don't hear the laughing. So you kind of rely on your sound guy, you know, with that. Some people get like, oh, it has to be dead silent. I'm just like, if people are laughing, but we caught it, great. You know, or ADR, if you got it, you're not going to be able to replicate that again. You know, you move on and then just say, all right, we'll deal with that if we have to in like sound design.
Well, and that's the other thing. I mean, in just listening to it, because I mean, in listening to Dave hear the song and then play the song, it really did feel like walk me through sort of who composed the song or who tried to figure out the riff, because it really did feel like that sort of demonic guitar riff that maybe we haven't heard in like 100 years, that somebody just pulled out of the ethos. It really fit the material so well.
Yeah, and that was the thing we had to really kind of come up with before we started shooting the movie. We needed to have the song, or what was going to be playing in the song, because we had to base each kind of like sections in the movie, when things were starting to get darker and darker, of different parts of the song. So Dave actually wrote all of it. And we had already a thing that was recorded that he did all by himself, this whole song. And I got the recording. I broke it down into scenes of where certain parts of the song were going to take place. And we didn't want to go with like your typical like Foo Fighters song. And, you know, we're going with a movie that's about basically a band member in the 90s that's very much metal and cultish, who's, you know, more metal. So we wanted to lean more towards the heavier side of music. But then also in the movie, the music changes so weirdly, because Dave's actually having trouble trying to figure out where this song's going to go, right, and having to finish the song. So it goes from like a stoner rock vibe in the beginning to like a black metal, you know, vibe, to a punk vibe, to then an acoustic guitar, then back to the stoner rock. And then, you know, it just like, there's all these crazy changes that come about it. And we wanted, it was almost like him trying to figure it out, making a song, but it goes all over the place in the end. It's like, you know, that's what's going to take over the world.
So, I mean, I guess that dovetails into something else I want to ask, because when you're in the house, like, is that a house or is that a set, or are you having to do a build? Like, how do you sort of craft some of these small spaces, or was it just a house? Like, was it a craft job, or was it something, a place that you found?
No, it was actually the house where they recorded Medicine at Midnight.
Oh, okay. All right. So perfect.
It is actually the house. So when I first met Dave, they were still recording the album. So I would meet at the house. All their instruments were everywhere, and the guys were in different rooms kind of doing things. The engineers, everybody was like, the whole house was just kind of busy with like doing, recording this album. And which was amazing because it actually, once I got on board, sometimes you get on board a movie and you don't have a set built. You don't know what's going to look like until like a couple days before you're on it. The great thing about this is that we had the house, so I could take the script and walk around while the guys are recording Medicine at Midnight, and I'm all walking around by myself, and I'm looking at the certain areas in the script, and I'm going, okay, well, this is going to play really good here. We're going to do this scene here, or we're going to go over here, or hey, we've seen this room too many times. Because honestly, making a movie in one location is really tough to keep engaging. It's very hard because if you keep making it look the same, it just starts to become a little stale. So you got to keep trying to make interesting stuff. And honestly, that whole house, we used every inch of that property to like make things happen, to like try to go all over the place. And it was a very weird layout. So that was, it was an actual house.
Well, that's a good
Encino.
thing, man. I mean, I got to love it when you find real spots to make this stuff, because I mean, I definitely think it adds to the material. And I mean, in watching the film, something else that struck me was just this kind of reminded me of music videos from the 80s and 90s that had story and had plot. And I'm kind of curious, from your perspective, as someone who obviously exists in both worlds, we don't get those music videos anymore. Why do you think we've lost that sort of art of storytelling?
I think sometimes it comes down to the fact it's easy to, well, first of all, going into like logistics and things, I think budgets have gotten lower for music videos. So people don't get to elaborate on actual creating stories. It's harder to do unless you do like, honestly, like a story in one house and you make it kind of like tell a thing, blah, blah, blah. I personally like doing the stories. Like I always go back to the Slayer videos that I did. And I don't know if you've seen them, but there's a storyline. There's 3 songs that we did, and I made a middle story. Then I had to make a prequel and then a sequel, and they all kind of fit together and make one story. Because I'm an 80s kid. I grew up in the 80s watching these videos. And for me, that's how I kind of always saw music videos. But it's also, some people they take an easy route of making videos where it's like, okay, we have a warehouse. All right, get a cool wide lens, get a ring light on it, and you're going to go moving back and forth. Whoa, and it's a simple, easy thing to do. It takes a lot more time to actually craft a story and also get a band performance, in music videos. Sometimes I feel like sometimes it's budgetary. Sometimes it's just people just want to see people dancing or singing in front with a big wide lens in front of them and doing that kind of stuff, but I think music video budgets have just gotten lower, and they
it's true. Back in the day, you get a budget for a video that you make a feature on now.
Oh, 100%. I mean, there were $1 million music videos back then, and you're blown away by like what they did. Now you're lucky. I mean, I just did an Exodus video, and I won't even tell you what the budget is on that, but I can't believe we actually got the video made for what it was. So it's also a labor of love, and the people you bring people in, you go, hey, look, I got this video. I know, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you to do this. You can say no, but, the guys really want this, and Exodus is rad. So, you kind of have to go with your resources and hope and pray that they'll do it.
Now, I'm curious, from your perspective, why are hard rock and metal always tied with horror? Because I mean, throughout history, they've always seemed to be joined at the hip. Like I don't think we're going to see a K-pop band doing a horror movie. It's always going to be like sort of a hard rock band or a metal band. Like why do the two mesh so well together?
Well, I will say this to start. I would say it would be amazing to see like a K-pop or like the pop star like horror film, because it would be so wrong on every level, but maybe so right, because everything would be so weird, and you could just go and make it just so odd. I would love to see that. I think that honestly, rock and metal with horror combined, I always feel like it's the energy of the music. Sometimes it's the lyrics, depending on how heavy the band is. It's also the album imagery. It's album covers. A lot of times, a lot of metal bands and rock bands, some of their album covers are really scary. It really, like, they're horrifying. With death metal and just regular like Slayers and Cannibal Corpse and even Black Sabbath, like one of their album covers is it's horrifying. I think it kind of goes hand in hand because of that vibe. There's also a lore about heavy metal and rock. Like back in the 80s, remember there was always some like satanic panic thing going on with Ozzy Osbourne, bat heads and all these crazy stories about like, oh, heavy metal, it made my kid go bad. Or like, if you spin the record backwards, it's going to do this, like the movie The Gate, which I love. That's a movie I'd love to remake. That movie's awesome. But it's like, it's that. I feel like that's why metal and rock go hand in hand with horror.
No, I think you're absolutely right, man. And I mean, it's just one of those things that, yeah, I mean, it's peanut butter and jelly, really. When you boil it down to it, it's just one of those things that they just work, and it's a great thing. And I mean, in watching this film, I love the beats, I love the set pieces, and I mean, there's even a bit of a cameo in the film, which I won't give away, but I mean, it's a bit of a nod to sort of the genre and sort of the things that the film references. But I love that it was done very subtly. How important was it for you to sort of pay homage to a lot of this stuff, but not sort of hit the audience over the head with a rubber mallet doing it kind of thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, it was more of a personal thing. And it's not so much trying to force feed somebody like, hey, this, if you notice this, you must love this.
Right.
It was more of like things that I cared about growing up. And there's like I said, I know who you're talking about. So there's certain people in it that are huge influences on me in this film. And coming down from being directing and score, they were very influential for me. Certain imagery of certain horror films, very influential, and things that whenever I'm reading the script, I wanted to make sure that we kind of captured those moments. Certain styles of visual effects that we did also were throwbacks to other movies that I really loved growing up. So for me, it was more of a personal journey of things that I could do on this movie. And I always try to do that anyways. I always try to give a little piece of myself into every movie that I do, just because I did grow up as an 80s kid with horror films and adventure movies and, things like that. That's a personal journey for me.
From an effects standpoint, did you try to do as much as you could in camera? Because I mean, I think specifically to Dave finding the tape reel in the basement, it felt very sort of Raimi in the cabin kind of thing. Like when you're trying to put together an effect shot, is it all in camera, or like how much do you have to rely on the digital side of things?
I personally try to do everything as practical as possible. And that doesn't mean everything is going to be fully practical. It just means that if I can start and I can build this thing practically, or make it so it's something that is actually, when the audience sees it, they know that that's a real thing, that you could really like build that or see it. I think that's important for me, because that's the effects of the 80s that I used to love, and like was seeing the craftsmanship of certain effects artists and their shop, and how they would build certain things to create something like The Thing. Think about that. Like, how cool are those effects? Because you could really look at that and go, oh my God, that's so cool. Those effects are so great. And so I'm not like, for me personally, I love practical effects, but I'm also not opposed to enhancing practical effects.
Right.
As long as you have the practicality of it there, as long as you have something to base it on. And it's not just someone with a stick and a tennis ball saying, this is the monster. All right, watch this tennis ball. Here's the monster. And
that's the fucking worst.
But that's exactly, like, that happens on a lot of things. Like, all right, you have to envision this thing here, and this is how tall he is. I also think, as an actor standpoint, it's better for actors to see something, to be able to play off of something that could really get them, that could really attack them. Because if you're chasing an actor with a tennis ball and they have to go, oh my God, and run. But if you actually have something that's like, rah, and like coming at you, they're like, oh my God, and they go running. You know what I mean? Like, so it just totally. It's a performance thing. It also helps too. You know, having practical people there, or the things that are happening are real, because you get real reaction.
Now, I mean, when this episode airs, it's not, I mean, it's going to be audio only, so people won't be able to see what I see. I almost think your film is the perfect encapsulation of the two posters that you have behind you, with MacGruber and then Slayer. It for some reason, it just, to me, like, the second I noticed it was MacGruber, I'm like, shit, that's perfect. And I'm kind of curious, from your perspective, if you had to sell this to somebody, how would you describe it? Because there's so many elements going on in this film, but it's really such a love letter, almost to sort of, like I said before, the cinema that a lot of us grew up with.
It's funny because we all talked about like what the kind of combination is, and we always said it's kind of like the Beatles' Help meets Evil Dead. That's kind of like what we were always kind of going with. Like, okay, that's a good way to kind of sell it. In MacGruber, it's funny because, like, I mean, in the slates, this is my office, so I was a camera operator on the MacGruber movie, and then, you know, my office, I usually take something from every movie. So if I showed you, you'd be like, holy crap. I have like slates galore and just all sorts of weird stuff in here. But I'm very proud of MacGruber. It's one of my favorite things that I've done. So of course I'm going to hang a poster up.
Well, as well you should be, man. God damn, you know, if that is an earmark from my perspective for sure. Now,
Oh,
I
I
mean,
love it. I love the group.
just to put a bow on this, I'm kind of curious for you going forward doing projects. Do you always see sort of music being a part of it, or like are there ideas that you have that maybe separate yourself entirely from music going forward?
I don't limit myself to like just things being just music or this or that, because for me, I'm a music lover. Everything I do, like metal is the soundtrack of my life.
Right.
I wake up in the morning, I play metalcore. I get in my car, I'm blasting metal, or I play music or film scores. Like Hans Zimmer's, or Jerry Goldsmith's, or whoever, Basil Polidorus. Those, like I just play scores and I think of ideas. So everything around me in my head is about the musical feeling, or an idea. If I start thinking of an idea of a film, I want to start trying to like make a pitch for it. It's always about me. I'm all for making just regular movies. It doesn't always have to be involved with music. If it has music, awesome. I think score is very important, no matter what. Maybe it not be metal, it doesn't have to always be metal. I think a really wonderfully composed score is very important for movie making. Yeah, I mean, I'm open to whatever. Honestly, it doesn't. I don't want to stick myself in one area and say, it has to be this or that. Although I would love to do a movie that has pure metalcore and double bass drums just going off through all the action sequences. I think that'd be so cool. A vampire movie with metalcore.
I love it. Yeah, for sure. Now, I mean, just to put a final bow on this, it's a dumb question, but it just came to me and I want to ask it. If MacGruber had to do a pull quote for Studio 666, what would it be?
Oh boy, I don't even know if I could say that. It would be so violently, it would be so like volatile and I mean, there's so many ways MacGruber could go about saying or saying something about this movie. You'd either get the really pissed off one where it's just, his language is so graphic, or you get the pleading or begging like for forgiveness or trying to get someone to do something you want. I don't know which one. I wish I could just get Will Forte to show up and do that one for us. Maybe I can get a soundbite from him. My impersonation would be absolutely horrible. I can't do it any better than Forte.
But you know what, man? I think both those responses apply, because I mean, this was such a surprise, because I mean, it's funny, but it's so true to the genre as well. And I mean, I think audiences are going to get a real fucking kick out of it when they see it, man. It's going to be a hoot. It's going to be a genuine surprise, and I think people are going to love it.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that not only the Foo Fighters fans were happy, but the horror fans and the people that enjoy comedy. I wanted to make sure that everyone that's going to see this has a little something they can go see and be happy with it. I'm not trying to just make sure that certain fans of just the music or the band is stoked on it. I want them to also love it. I mean, some of these guys might freak out about it because they don't like horror films. I mean, who knows? But I think this movie has a little bit of everything to keep people happy and having fun. Main thing of this film is just, it's fun. We want everybody to just have a good time and laugh, enjoy it with their friends, put it on at a party, and just go. Because I think it plays like that. It's like you're going to see a show. It's pure fun.
No, it is pure fun. I mean, God willing, one day you get to make a sequel with Dave running around with his boomstick, killing zombies or vampires coming out of the ground, because I think that'd be a hell of a lot of fun too. But you know what, man? Congrats again.
I got a sequel idea already. I'm ready already with the sequel. I already have it.
Please tell me Dave has a shotgun or a weapon of some sort. That's all I ask.
We'll definitely up the antes. If this goes off and people are down, I think we're going to be begging for a part 2, and I am ready to deliver. Me and Dave will get together with the rest of the crew, and we'll come up with something super crazy. But I already have an idea.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, man. I can't wait for that, man. Fingers and toes crossed. But thanks again for the time, BJ. This was fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.